Hey, my name's Troy Klein. I'm the vice chair of the TTC. This is the February 10th meeting of the TTC and Gene Sealing Room 204 in City Hall. We'll have first roll of business as a call of order. Member Bill Horns and Michael Gernitz have excused absences. I'm here. Rich Tate, present. Alder Gabriel Gayhart,
Here.
present. And Jason Strauss.
Present.
And Elizabeth Ward.
Here.
We have a quorum of 5 members. Next roll of business will be public appearances for non-agenda items. I see nobody in the public. Nobody's online. Next order of business will be approval of the agenda of the January 13th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? No additions or deletions?
Do you have to push this button to talk?
No, you don't have to do anything.
Okay.
All right, then we'll vote on the motion to approve the agenda. Is there a vote by approval by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Approval is unanimous. We have next approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Oh, we did it slightly out of order. We did the minutes, now we're gonna do the agenda.
Oh, I thought that was,
I thought, yeah.
I thought we were doing the agenda. Oh, I
I move approval of all, everything.
Discussion of the agenda? Okay, then we'll have a vote. Is there approval of the agenda? Vote by saying aye.
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 That's unanimous. We'll next go to item 6A of the agenda, review of the 2010 Transit Study and Network Design. Andrew, can you start us off on the discussion?
Sure. And just to double check, did anybody have anything on the minutes? I know there's some confusion there. I think we're good, but just want to double check. Okay, we're good. Awesome. Yeah, so this is, this first part is kind of a two-parter. So we can spend as much time as you guys want on either. You've seen the network redesign kind of in draft form. What I have included in the packet now is basically a, the latest from Metro released last week. And I'll share my screen real fast just so everybody can see what I'm referencing. So this is kind of the draft plan as Metro described it. And so, we talked a lot about the Fish Hatchery Road line, so that'd be 15-minute headways coming, so that would be the B coming from downtown, down Fish Hatchery, 15-minute headways, the D. And I can certainly describe these more in detail, but generally speaking, from downtown, and actually there's 2 lines north of downtown, like branches on the north side too, to go east on Milwaukee or go up to the airport. But then as far as near us, it would be down Monroe Street and then have 2 branches, one to go down to us, the D2, that would be 30-minute headways, and then the D1, which would be going over to the west side on Mineral Point. And so what you'll see, for where you see it going, the D1, D2, just to clarify that. So it'll have 15-minute headways and it'll branch. So every other one will go one way or the other, right? So that's where you get the difference in headways. So we'll have 30-minute service, in kind of the King James Way area, down to the shopping center. Then the H line very much parallels what the 18 does currently, kind of going from, as far as Fitchburg is concerned. But then after Fitchburg, it does go out this way and then up to kind of South Middleton, Northwest Madison. And so that will kind of connect with the G line still. So this is very similar to the 1816 currently, still stopping at that kind of pseudo transfer point. And then the G line will continue east along the east side of Madison. And then we also have the 75, which stays very much the same, just commuter service through on McKee and Fish from Verona. And then the Z line, which we didn't talk about too much last time, but that is a commuter service that comes from downtown, utilizing John Nolan to Rimrock, to MM, Lacey, East Sherrill, and then to the Civic Center and loops back. So that'd be similar to the 49 currently. And so but instead of going to the west, the south transfer point, that would be going downtown. So that's kind of changes in a nutshell. As far as, we can certainly talk about some of the nuances, like for example, the transfer points are largely going away. As I mentioned, there's kind of a pseudo one, but the time transfers are largely not going to be a thing anymore. So currently, it's kind of pulses so that everything kind of comes in these 30-minute or 60-minute headways, and you can get on and off. That's largely going away in kind of combination with instead direct service to downtown and the campus. And so, you'll notice a lot of these, the D, the B, the Z, those are all going directly to downtown and campus. And the H, really just kind of parallels the 16, kind of making sure that folks can get to the B, get downtown, but also get to West Madison, and the G to East Madison. So that's kind of, again, that's in a nutshell as far as what we could talk about tonight. I want to get everybody, aware of this as we talk about the 2010 transit plan, but note that this isn't the last time we're going to see this or review it. And the plan right now is to have multiple public engagement. First, starting with Madison, kind of a region-wide in late February, and then Fitchburg specific public meeting in March. And then we will bring it to council and committee of the whole in April to talk about this. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunities to discuss this, but I at least want to get it to you because I know it's fresh off the presses. So any questions about this?
Yes, hey, Andrew, this is Rich. Is this a current map that we're looking at now? Because I know that the report was from 2010. I actually read it 10 years ago. But is what we're looking at now today?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so this is a two-parter. One was sorry, we kind of buried the lead in there. I just want to get kind of the network redesign network out of the way so we could dive into the 2010 study. But yes, right.
Okay,
what
so
I was
that's what I
referencing was
just
the
wanna make sure.
redesigned draft network, and so we can then jump into the 2010 transit study. But I just want to make sure, does anybody have any questions about this? I think it's only relevant in terms of how we think about the 2010, knowing that the 2010 transit study is a little bit out of date now, but I think it's related to this effort.
I have a few questions, Andrew. This is
Sure.
Gabriella. First is it possible to get a map from Metro that's focused on Fitchburg and shows the old routes and then how this changes? Because I know there are some changes like on the Jamestown or in the west side of Madison where it's no longer gonna go through, it's not going through the neighborhoods anymore. It's gonna be centered on that one road, King James. And I know there's some changes with where it's going through on Post Road, which I know is a high usage area. It just would be interesting to see an overlay of the maps as it is now and versus what the change is proposed. Is that something that we could request from Metro?
Definitely, and I think that, if anybody has anything else like that, right now they're kind of in the exhibit preparation stage. So one of the aspects that they're thinking about doing is, creating a kind of a map of here are the changes and a little QR code of go to the study, give us your survey responses, and putting that in a few places around the city. So something like that I think would be a great exhibit to show here's what it is, here's what it's going to be, at least in draft form. Yep. And if there's anything else like that, like for example, accessibility, a comparison map like that, I think now is the time to ask for those.
Yeah. My other concern about the public information meetings, so like March for a Fitchburg specific meeting seems quite soon to me. I mean, I know we should have more than one and we shouldn't wait too long, But it's in terms of advertising it. The city of Fitchburg does a pretty poor job of advertising public meetings, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. And I think this public meeting in particular is really vital for people, and we cannot have a meeting in City Hall for people that utilize bus service that literally cannot get to City Hall on the bus. So I think where we hold the meeting is important, and I think we need to have meetings in multiple locations in order for people to have accessibility. But it's more about the advertising of the meeting that's concerning to me, making sure that people are notified, because I have to imagine that there are a lot of people that use this bus service that do not know that there are changes coming, even if it's not going to be implemented to 2023. Like, this is a big enough deal that people need to know now what the impact could be on their lives, and I'm very concerned about the people that aren't aware of it. So what kind of conversations are happening with, I know it's not just on us, but it's on us and it's on Metro. Like, is there a big campaign on the buses that people are taking about what this looks like? It seems like the people that are riding the bus, like, it should be very clear as they're riding that they need to be knowing about these changes coming. I don't know,
Sure.
do you have?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just commenting that, because all the residences in District 1 look like they're not getting any bus service at all. Buses are gonna go down and just go down Mccoy and back, but nothing in the neighborhoods. So this is the way it's planned, or is this something that can be changed through the PIMs?
Yeah, I mean, this is draft, so there certainly is flexibility in it. I would say, I think what this generally represents is a ridership-leaning network. So more frequent service in areas where we're going to expect to see the highest ridership, less of a coverage network that maybe dips into neighborhoods, lower density neighborhoods, that sort of thing. But those sorts of nuanced decisions, King James Way versus Anton, and those, I feel like that's really what we need to suss out over the next 2 or 3 months, because ultimately Metro wants to have this adopted by May, and that's kind of what's accelerating the timeline. But to Gabriella's point, that, I already met with Metro. They're really in the kind of planning stage of, okay, let's find the exhibits we need. How are we going to market this? When are we going to start scheduling meetings? They don't have anything scheduled yet. So yeah, now is really a time of how they're going to advertise and how we're going to market that. So I think what they're going to basically, if we could get them a list of things that we would like, both in terms of advertisements, the thing they told me was they can show up. The hard part is getting the meetings organized and getting people to show up. And so I think reaching out to alders, getting some of the community groups together, and then posting obviously things on the buses as well, so that we can hit folks from different ways depending upon how they interact with bus service now. So yeah, that's key in my mind of how do we get the most public feedback, because this is the biggest change we're going to see in probably 20 years. I think that it's important now to get that engagement.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to see is the data. There is data now from each stop where they pick up passengers, and they can tell you number of passengers by the hour throughout the day. I'd kind of like to see that in a chart somewhere if they're going to be talking about changing the routes or eliminating routes, so we can see how many people are really affected.
Yep, they definitely have their famous red dot map that showed, the size of the red dot is how many riders or boarders they have at each stop. So they can definitely give us that. And, obviously the last 2 years have been a little anomalous in terms of ups and downs of ridership, mainly downs. But, it still gives us a relative understanding, across stops, cross-sectionally.
Andrew, it'd be helpful too, when ever a map like this is produced, to have a cost estimate especially for Fitchburg share. So
Yep.
we can gauge if there's no sense asking for it if we're already at the expected, budgetary limit. So, but
Right.
that will help in
Yep.
the future.
Yeah, I just want to note that right now, Metro said that the intention is for this to be revenue neutral. So, with our last discussion, last time approving the transit agreement that was approved at council on Tuesday, really we're talking about annual budget of service hours. So we sum up all routes, we get about, we're in the mid 9,000s right now, getting up to 11,000 by 2024. Basically, let's just say, for these purposes, this being implemented likely in August 2023, we're looking at 11,000 hours annually. So what we can do is, as these sort of nuanced changes happen, well, maybe, for example, the Z, what would it look like if we, brought it into the neighborhood, and does that help folks? Those sorts of discussions. How much does that add? Is the Z able to take that extra time and still cycle, every 30 minutes or 60 minutes? Those sorts of discussions, I think that's really what I like to talk about over the next, 2 or 3 months, just to get down to the nitty gritty. So, but yeah, that's definitely, right now it should be relatively revenue neutral. So anything we change, we just want to be cognizant of how we're going to make that up or increase the budget.
Yeah, I take it, they don't use Cahill Main exit anymore. It's kind of, the map seems to imply that they make that right, like they do now, but they circle back and go back to that, to exit at the drugstore.
And again,
that
that's
doesn't
a
make sense.
nuance that, we certainly have to, I would say, take the left turn out at Cahill Main to head back north.
Yeah, we have
Just
to
to
do
use
that
the-
at the light. There's no left turn
Yep.
now. And they did the engineering
right.
pretty good to prevent that, unless you really want to break the law now with the reconstruction, so.
Right.
That map
But
doesn't-
yeah, we're able to turn right at, Cahill Main
Yeah,
or High Ridge.
yeah, so there's only left turn is at the stoplighted intersection now.
Am I understanding it correctly that there's going to be no route down Williamsburg Way?
That's correct. So the D2, that's, I think,
That's what I
of the
was
kind of
saying.
bigger changes, I would say that's one of them. That instead of down King James Way, Williamsburg, and then up Whitney, like it currently does, it would, go straight to Anton and then kind of up into the Allied neighborhood. And so, what that service currently does is, go from the shopping center north to the west transfer point. That won't be the case anymore. It will kind of be more in an east alignment. There'll still be an option, to get there, right? But I feel like that's one of the nuance. Like that's certainly as far as looking at the map and seeing the lines, right? That's one of the most apparent changes. I think, as we'll find out over the next 2 months, there's a lot of nuanced, in particular, origin and destination pairs that folks have gotten used to that, utilize every day. I think those will also start to fall out to say, hey, this is the way I'm using transit. This new map might be great for everybody else, but it doesn't serve me. And I think working through that and seeing if there's an option, to help that and to the degree that exists, I think that's what we'll find out.
That's what I was driving at when I wanted to see the counts, because the whole area in District 1, the Williamsburg Way and that area, I see buses there all the time, and I imagine they're getting used, but if there's a trade-off, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
But
the
that really
trade-off is
sticks
frequency.
out really big, and I'd hate to be paying money to Madison Metro to drive empty buses around our neighborhood without stopping and getting anybody, especially if it's a half-hour walk to get a bus.
It'd be interesting to look where that route is, and actually, I would love to go out there and just walk it and see how long it takes from where it is now versus
I don't want
where
to
it's
walk
gonna
it.
be. It would be an important data point, I think, for us to just consider. But Andrew, I really do think it's important to get a Fitchburg-specific map with an overlay of where it currently is and where it is now, what the proposal is now, with roads labeled. It really needs to, at least in the areas that it's affecting, the roads need to be
Yep.
labeled. And I think we should do that as soon as possible, and we should start putting it, I know the social media is not great, but like at least start getting a map out there so people can share it. People can start saying, hey, this big thing is coming, take a look and see if this affects you. Ideally, we have a date in mind, but if not, maybe it's just a link to something where we're gonna have more information coming somewhere to
Yep.
people to give feedback.
And
But
we do have sorry.
No,
I was just gonna say, we do have a public transit notify me, so that's definitely for folks. Even if we don't have a date, they can sign up and then we can email out once we do.
That's perfect, just get
But,
people.
well, I think Gabriella hit on it earlier, because the people who really should be there are the people that ride the buses. So if there's a note on the buses saying, hey, you know what, just to let them know about the meeting, I think that would be a primary spot.
I'd be interested to know what Metro's plan is to advertise on buses and not at bus stops. Because I assume that they have a plan to do that, but I would be interested in knowing more details about that. And if we can tailor some for the Fitchburg specific areas. Because I also think getting rid of the transfer point's kind of a big deal too. Like now, like actually looking at the map and thinking about it, I have to imagine that there are people out there that how they got around using the transfer points is no longer going to be as feasible as it was. And they have to know that that's happening, because this might benefit the system as a whole and increase ridership as a whole, but there are individuals that are going to be in a bad spot because of this.
Yeah.
And that's the way it happens
to work.
anytime you redo a network. But the sooner they know, the better, because right now we're probably we're a year and a half out from implementing this, at least, maybe 2 years. They might need that much lead time. They might have to physically move. Like, if they have a job on another side of town they can't get to, like, they might have to move, and that's why they need to know if this is gonna happen, they need to know now.
Yeah, it could affect people's decisions as to when and where and why,
Housing
and how to
decisions.
move, so to speak.
Yeah, and you need like at least a year
Yeah.
usually to make those types
Yeah.
of calls.
The other thing I think would be, what a heat map is, it'd be a heat map, but based on walking distance. So, like a 5-minute walk, maybe 15-minute walk, or whatever. I mean, I think you only need 2 numbers there, but I think that would be quite useful. I think people, you can access the numbers better than I can, but I think it's something like 15 minutes are what most people the maximum they'll walk to catch a bus. So I get, a formal reference for that of some study, and then use that on your heat maps for 5 minutes is no problem, 50 minutes is the outer limit type of thing.
Yep.
And
Definitely.
there's no problem with sharing this map with people and getting feedback, correct?
Nope, exactly. I think the more formal survey mechanisms will open up later, but yeah, certainly now, get it out as much as you can. Yep, yeah, it's all on the city's Metro's website. So, along with a company report and like some more documentation. So,
Yeah.
I definitely urge folks to look at that. And I think that this could be a standing topic on the next 3 meetings, right? Just to kind of discuss where we're at and how we're moving forward with marketing this.
Yeah, the Fitchburg Star, I think, should be a early candidate for any copy of this map. They access a bunch of people that probably no other way is access for Fitchburg news.
Yeah, has someone reached out to the Fitchburg Star about this? Andrew? Someone from
I
the
haven't.
city?
No.
We should contact them soon. and
Yeah, we should
get a
push.
feature.
We should be in the push mode for this, so.
Especially because now is close to, it's gonna come out, just the deadlines come up so fast for the Star. If we
Yeah,
want it in the
it's
March
pretty
Fitchburg
close.
Star. Yeah.
All right, is there any further discussion?
One thing that I think could be helpful on the map of old and new would be if you could, or if they could include like really big job centers. I know a couple years ago, I saw a map and like Sub-Zero was listed as one of the top 25 employers that had limited transit access. It'd be good to know if there are any changes for any of the big job centers.
That's a good point.
Yep, we can definitely do that. And I think another thing that we talked about, I believe at the last meeting, is kind of those priority areas, kind of overlaying that on top of it as well, so that you can see some of the polygons of kind of where folks would want to go, where Fitchburg's prioritizing service, that sort of thing. So.
Okay.
Let's carry Elizabeth's concept a little further. Maybe we ought to notify those businesses that this PIM is occurring. And if somebody needs to get their input or would like to get their opinions expressed regarding transportation, they might be driving now, but they might wish they were taking a bus or would have liked to have if it was better service.
Yeah, do we have a liaison officer for Fish Hatchery Road? Do we have others?
We did have a liaison officer for Fitchburg Road. I think now the project's over. I think
The project's over, so there's no other conduits there. But the
yeah,
Boys
I mean,
and
I could
Girls
certainly reach out
Club
to economic development and get some contacts
The
for some
Boys
of the
and
major
Girls Club,
employers.
the Boys and Girls Club, and Sub-Zero, and there's some obvious big centers of
We could maybe ask the Madison Chamber, or the Fitchburg Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
To help.
This, I think we need an all points push on this, pretty important. Any further discussion? Okay, then, we'll move on to the review of the Beltline Pell proposal.
Well, did you want
Oh.
to talk about the rest of 6A?
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, that was,
Oh.
it was confusing
Oh.
two-parter.
Oh, okay, I wasn't quite sure. All right, let's continue then.
Okay, sweet. So, yeah, so hopefully everybody had a chance to review go back and, and review the 2010 to 2014, 5-year transit plan. I can do a quick review. I know some of you guys know a lot more about this and its development than I. And so I think one thing, just kind of put this in context, as we do this, there's certainly a call within the document for kind of annual 5-year plans, kind of update to this plan annually. That's definitely one thing we can talk about if that's something that we want to do. I will say as a requirement to get, to basically switch over to get direct funding from WSDOT, they would like to see kind of an update, just a 1 or 2 page kind of update refresh to the transit plan. And so I've been kind of starting to work on that. And I think this is a great time to talk through kind of what's in the plan, what we'd like to update, those sorts of things, so that I can, make those changes and get that up to WSDOT. Just because we're starting new service, technically with them, that I think they would like that understanding of kind of what our current plan is, right? And so I think a lot of that's hinging on this network redesign as far as future service, but I think there's a lot of goals and objectives and policies that are laid out in the plan. So, along those lines, I'll just kind of lead in with there's the 3 sections. There's certainly a lot about the existing conditions. Obviously, a lot of that has changed. There's certainly a lot about the 2008 transit survey. Certainly, although I'm sure a lot of those trends still stay the same. But the data itself is quite outdated. Then into section 2, I believe that's really kind of a transition from the, at that time, current comp plan and the transportation section into kind of how those goals, objectives, policies relate to transit. And then I think section 3 kind of went into a little bit more of the TTC of, okay, looking at all that, here's, our general transit goals for the plan, both, short, medium, and long term. As far as action items. And so, there's a lot to talk about in that. I would say, in my opinion, section 2, I can certainly just update based upon the more updated comp plan. I'll say that most of those goals, objectives, policies have stayed the same, but there's definitely been some updates. We can go through those. And then if it's okay with you, I'd like to spend most of our time on section 3, just making sure that those goals, specific to the transit plan, the short, medium, long-term actions are updated and reflecting of what you guys believe, And so we can take as long as short as possible, or just have comments, but I'd like to open it up.
I think it's needed.
Is there
I think that it's out of date, and I think it should probably be used as a base for the next one, but I think we should reissue one and then have a plan to update it either annually, every other year, every 5 years. Because, a lot of the businesses have changed. When this was done, Hy-Vee wasn't there yet. The Verona Road was just, nowhere near what it is now. There's been so much change that I guess it's frustrating to read this when it's so outdated. And so if we want to address that, I think we should basically scrub and start fresh. Or use this as a base to rebuild it.
The library wasn't open at the time either.
Yeah. And I was younger. Lots.
Is there a formal deadline, Andrew, attached with this? Document, or is it
I'm waiting to hear back from WSDOT in terms of what WSDOT's looking for. I believe in this month or next month, they would like to get that refresh. Again, that could be basically as small as us just going through and kind of, I can certainly update the existing conditions as far as, updating the map that I've created for some of the other staff memos, refreshing that data. refreshing, obviously, the section 2 with the update comp plan. That's pretty straightforward. And then it'd just be, I think I need a lot kind of dialogue with you folks about section 3 and just making sure that those transit plan specific goals, objectives, policies are and action items are reflective of what you guys are interested in.
Yeah,
And I can definitely bring that up on the screen if you guys want to dive in on that.
Well, I'm okay, and I think a lot of this could also be incorporated, or you can incorporate items from the Beltline Pell studies or meetings, because that shows where they're going down the road and would give us, I mean, I noticed that Whitney Way and I think Fish Hatchery Road were getting a lot of attention during the meeting for future improvements. So that would have a lot to do with what we could build on too.
yeah,
Okay.
I think it makes sense for you to do the obvious overhauls. You know, and then the next meeting, we can bone up on, you know, we can then fine tune that based on, you know, obvious, this should be replaced, this should be updated, that type of stuff. Because right now, we're looking at a document so old, we really don't have a reference on, you know, it's basically change everything. And so if we do that for the next meeting, then we can start doing
Let's ask Andrew, what
more surgical
would you
stuff.
be able to get done by the next meeting? Maybe a outline or a concept or whatever, and get into the details or the numbers later, or what do you see possible for you to achieve?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I could do an overall refresh of the document in terms of the data. I mean, there's no way we're going to do a full new transit survey, right? So I think a lot of that information is just going to get lost. We're basically drop that.
It's outdated, so yeah.
Until we get an updated survey. So, you know, and that's a bulk of the document as far as the maps and kind of the existing conditions. So, you know, I think dropping that, you know, updating the existing conditions with just route information stops and that sort of thing. And then updating section 2, that's relatively easy. I could definitely get that done. The question I have is getting into section 3, you know, there's certainly some, you know, specific things about rail corridors that I feel like could probably be dropped for now, just knowing that if RTAs are not or at least just moved into the long term. I feel like I could start making some of those changes, but I just don't want to do that without kind of consulting everybody first.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the type of change that I think makes sense, is
Yeah.
stuff that's obviously was a big item possibly 15 years ago or so. Now, we know it's indefinite. There's no real news or foreseeable item there, you know,
Because a lot of these are
do it.
what we talk about. It's in
Yeah.
here. It's just a matter of, like, some of these are the same things we've talked about,
Yeah.
bus rapid transit, park and rides,
Yeah.
improving service. But some of them are obvious, like, I'm looking at page 8 of the plan, which is on page 15 of the packet. The ongoing transit coordination and planning. Coordinate with the Dane County Regional Transit Authority to ensure consistent local regional transit planning efforts. And then encourage the city of Madison to improve security at the south and west transfer points. Both of those, I
That's
think, are pretty
still-
out of
yeah.
date.
Well, I still needed it.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're
Yeah,
getting rid of
yeah,
the
yeah,
transfer points
yeah.
coming soon,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
all the
yeah.
metro changes are, this actually might be a good time, because over the next
Well-
year, the metro changes will really change some of the context of this document. Especially because there's so much of it is related to bus service.
Yeah, so it's three-dimensional. And Andrew, I see you as the expert. You should be telling us what it should be, or coming up with the idea for us to review, and you got the brains.
But we also know you're busy, so we don't want to,
Yeah,
I don't think this is the most urgent thing, but I think it is something we should work on this year.
yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Well, you said you had a deadline though, right? You had to have something provided for,
Yeah, as far as the kind of refresh, and again, the scope on that was relatively loose. I think they just want to make sure that we had kind of more up-to-date planning document for what our kind of goals and transit service are going to be over the next, at least in the short term. So I can certainly draft that up and get that onto the agenda next next month. So it would basically be maybe a reduced transit plan that, as you mentioned, might, maybe we don't scratch everything, we kind of bring over what we can, but then kind of start fresh from there. And so I can definitely produce that by next time. So it'll probably be 4 or 5 pages of mainly the goals, pared down to what is still relevant, especially in light of kind of the new update network redesign. So yeah, I can definitely do that. And if there's any specific guidance you'd like to give as far as, definitely keep this in, or, make that a priority, that sort of thing. If there's anything you want to change with the structure, please let me know now. But otherwise, yeah, I'll basically just do a draft update for next time.
Yeah, I think the on-call service for transit in the city might become more important once the city bus system gets reorganized through Metro. So that might be a topic that might become of interest to more people, is what do we do, to avoid having a transit desert, I guess is the term, there are going to be fewer ways to access mass transit in the city, especially with the 47 and the 40 going away. And I take it the 52, 59, that goes away too, the weekend service?
So the 52 weekday service would be replaced, and then and that's kind of by the D2 route, right? But as far as the 59, we don't have night and weekend service shown on here. This is kind of the all day, every day,
okay.
along with the commuter.
Okay.
So that still is a possibility, and they kind of left some contingency out in order to cover that. That's less hours, right? 2 days versus 5, that sort of thing. But so that's definitely a possibility still to add some of those in on kind of off peak or off weekend times.
Okay. All right.
And I can reflect that in the plan, that sort of thing. I do think one thing I noted just as I was reading through it was these kind of multimodal transfer points was a key, and I think the intention was, and which in some ways it's good because we're with the network redesign as it currently sits, we're having more direct service, but we're still not really adding that missing link. I think they reference an east-west route in Fitchburg that could connect a lot of these direct services. As you mentioned, maybe that's not necessarily a fixed route. Maybe that's a flexible route. Maybe that's something else. So that's definitely a possibility. It previously was mentioned as more of a fixed route, but I think that might be evolving if it's still necessary. So.
Are there any other comments on the transit study?
I guess the only thing I would say is that it would be interesting to make some sort of goal or statement related, and this is a choice, but really just sustainability in the context of climate change. I feel like things have changed a lot in the last 10 years, 12 years, about thinking about that as part of our goal. Obviously, reducing single-use vehicles.
Impact.
Yeah, and like greenhouse gas emissions. I don't know what that would be. And I don't know that we should necessarily make that decision now, but some sort of reference to sustainability as part of our goal in different ways, I think is important. I don't see that I haven't read like with a fine tooth comb, but I don't see that really captured at the moment, but I could be mistaken. And we are working on a sustainability plan that there's been funding put in for this year. So that work is coming. And so I hope that all plans in the city are going to mention that it's kind of an overarching theme, right? It's important.
Yeah, that
concept.
definitely was not on the horizon 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But now it's omnipresent. I'll repeat my comments I sent on the study on the next agenda item, but I think the city has to make more attention to the impacts, the existential impacts on the city, which are climate change is the primary one. And what happens with the people working from home and how that changes things. So I don't know if there are any studies that DOT has put out yet that impacts on Wisconsin highway aids and bus assistance and so forth, but if any of those come up, you'll have an eager audience by sharing it with us, for sure.
Sure.
All right, any other comments? Okay,
The other thing that I think could be nice to mention somewhere would, in terms of whether it's long-term, I think there's a lot more awareness now about the importance of parks access. And I think with McKee getting an inclusive playground, it might be good to just mention a goal of making sure there's access to McKee somewhere. And I mean, we talk about job centers and access, we named like specific jobs, and it might be nice to include McKee as a long-term goal, that there's access to McKee as well.
Well, you bring to mind something that I've harped on for the last 20 years. I'd like to see bus service to the schools. We've got several schools in Fitchburg that parents have to drive their kids back and forth from if they're miss the bus or if they're kicked off or whatever, I don't know. But a long time ago, I wanted to see Savannah Oaks and Stoner Prairie, and then the one up here off Post Road, I think there's one. So I don't know how practical that is, but it's something that I'd like to at least see it mentioned, so that sooner or later, someday, it might get addressed.
yeah, Andrew, the city, the Madison school system bus service kind of is a shadow network for our purposes, but pretty important. And because that impacts a lot of transit decisions by parents, especially in the city. So I think some word from Metro, you know, and the school system as to kind of what they're planning along with this network change. Because I know there are kids, I saw them when I took the 47 bus, that they would, you know, hop on and hop off at Regent Street and take, I think, the 2 to, you know, go to West High School type of thing. So I think that'll be an important but subtle factor into how all transit decisions are made in the city going forward.
Yeah, I think that all brings to mind too, it's like the equitable access to city services, city amenities, and, you know, other sorts of municipal amenities within the city bounds, like schools. That should be a thing we need to think about. People should have access, and people that have different transit needs should have access to equal access as much as possible. And sometimes that means we might have to do more for a certain area of town to access the city versus other areas of town. So equity, I mean, is the best word for it, but yeah, I think that speaks to all those things that were just mentioned. But
And after-school activities, that type of stuff. I mean, there's lots of factors going into decisions in transit. So that's why the school system input will be very important, I think, going forward, both for Metro and for us.
And maybe in that list, we could name voting locations, because I know that came up last fall or two falls ago, as sort of making sure everybody has access to those.
Yep. I mean, I don't know, the city might even consider a bus, you know, service just for voting day. Always a possibility. I think, I just thought of that, but I've never heard of that, and I think there's more of an emphasis on, you know, especially with the, you know, people restricted access because of the COVID-19 situation and everything, to access to voting. So I think that, along with schools, that's another factor. And maybe it means, you know, there's a metro-wide bus service to polls or something like that. But that obviously would have to, you know, be involved with the city clerks in their area and so forth. But that's a factor, I think. Any other comments for Andrew? Okay, now we'll get to the Beltline pill, which I made actually C on my list, but I misread it. All right, can you go through the summary of the status of the PEL survey, Andrew?
Sure. Yeah. So, I was able to attend the technical advisory committee for the PEL study.
I was there for the policy advisory one as well.
Awesome.
Very similar though, I think. The presentation was.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And so, what I included in the packet was the PowerPoint slides. I sent folks a link to the box video recording of it, just so you can get a little bit more of the narrative behind there. So really, I guess the intention is, I have a vote as part of the Technical Advisory Committee to prioritize these kind of subcomponent projects, and just kind of give an overarching idea of this. So there's, each one of these, for example, street crossings and bike ped crossings and parking ride. All of these are, I think they're going to prioritize the kind of the top 4 or 5, depending upon the list. It might be longer or shorter. And then based upon that, they're going to carry them forward to further analysis, ultimately to package them together into one of 3 or so kind of scenarios and so or packages. And that's kind of the information we have so far. So really, this is going to a number of folks across the various communities of the region that are affected by the Beltline, and so they're all filling out this survey. We want to make sure that you guys were getting a chance to be a part of this, and so one way that we can do this is just for me to go through, and if we can do it quickly, I think we can get through it in tonight's meeting, and I can fill out the survey for us. So basically, I get a vote, Bill Bulkey gets a vote from Board of Public Works, Gabriella gets a vote, and so really they're trying to keep it to the TAC and the PAC members as far as voting. They'll have a larger survey for the public, but I think they want to get a little bit more, get kind of folks engaged in the planning and engineering process in this survey. So we could basically go through it and then kind of as a group prioritize these. If that's going to be a little bit too slow, perhaps, and we want to keep moving, you could certainly send me your preferences. I'll take those into account and then vote myself. So basically just fill out the survey.
Andrew, do we have copies or something that we could put up of each of the different things where they were selecting the priorities? I wouldn't mind. We can't fill it out, the survey at home ourselves, but you got it. Oh, good. Never mind.
Yep. So this is my survey, so we can do it on the fly if you guys are interested. This is the roadway crossings, and so we really don't have a whole lot of information. Where you see the lines, it looks like a PowerPoint slide. They just kind of put arrows on a map. I'm sure there's some analysis behind this, and certainly some history behind these, but they don't have a lot more information about them. So this is kind of what we're left with. So for the Fitchburg crossings, this would be a crossing of US 14, some sort of bridge over, with wetland impacts, kind of connecting to the town of Madison, soon to be the city of Fitchburg. The D is somewhere between Fish and Park. That would, connect Cyan potentially to Park Street or kind of that area somehow. And then the other ones, are maybe a little more tangential, but you can kind of make them out. This would connect John Nolan with Broadway. And so that's really kind of the information, kind of where we're at. And so really, in terms of the process of actually analyzing this, we would, move these around. So this is the current rank order. And so C, over here is the current highest, followed by A, then D, then B, and then they actually included that they're planning on eliminating B and F currently because there were environmental concerns about E, and I believe F similarly that there was adjacent homes and residences that seem to complicate that one. So they're saying they're eliminated there. If we feel like they're important, we could drag them up. So are there thoughts about this? Do we feel comfortable with this? Do we just want to drag D in?
I have a question. There's 4 that are in the priority. Are chances of all of them or any of them being eliminated, or all of them going to be in there for sure, or do we want to prioritize those 4 also?
Well, there's E and F too.
I mean, I'd like to see
4.
Park
You mean
Street
E and
above
F?
Gammon, I guess, but if they're all tied and they're all going to go, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so really we're just giving them a rank order. So that's all we can give. So if there's one that we really don't want, that one should be on the bottom. If there's one we really want, the Fitchburg ones specifically, those should be on the top probably. And then we're certainly able, in the end, we're able to give more comments. I think I'll probably wait and just kind of hold off on the survey until I hear, if you guys want to send me your comments, I can kind of append them together and send them.
Yeah, my understanding is that they're going to for all the ones that aren't eliminated, they're going to put together a lot more detailed plans for how to move
And then
forward with it.
further distilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can't even, at this point, they don't know enough to even say like
Okay,
what the
okay.
timeline is. They just don't know enough. They're just trying to like
They're actually
narrow it
designing
down.
the framework
Yeah,
now
yeah, there's
to
some moving
actually
target,
detail.
so I'm
So
okay,
Exactly.
so I'm okay
they
with
threw everything against the wall and they said, whatever sticks, we'll then study in detail.
Yeah.
cooking spaghetti.
Yeah. Well, in the video of the meeting that I watched, they talked about F, and they said there are severe complications on economic and environmental
Environmental.
there, along with E as well. So
Yeah.
I think the priority and B and C to me are somewhat similar. They're kind of addressing the same area. So to me, there's really three choices. There's A, there's C, and D, and or BC. So to me, those are the three choices that make sense for further analysis, just based on the huge obstacles of E and F
All right.
in a
Okay.
practical sense.
So I guess I would say, they gave us a nice starting point here of this is, I think, the early feedback. They have the rank order, and so C's number one, kind of down the list, right? If we feel comfortable with this, we can move forward. If you guys want to see changes, feel free to recommend it.
I'm comfortable.
Yeah, because B is after A and D, so I think that makes,
Okay.
it
But
doesn't
there's
make
no
sense.
in there that you feel like, particularly strongly D should be the highest or C should be highest. You're
Well,
comfortable with the way it is?
Well,
D addresses an area of the city and Fitchburg that is economically been affected by the Beltline.
Yeah, I'd like to see
When they made a divided highway, that severely impacted both sides of, between Fish Hatchery and Park Street. Those neighborhoods were severely impacted, so I think, along with the environmental concerns, I think they should address what the economic impact is of the choices. Because it may not have, D may have the most economic impact of all the choices, and my guess and, experience of having lived in Madison for a long time. But
Okay.
that would be nice to
And-
get something hardcore economics, CETA, the city economic, and the Madison Economic Development groups may have valuable input on those two things.
Yeah,
What the impact is of which corridor should be prioritized on economic and development reasons.
yeah, I guess I'd like to see it say C, D, A, but they're tied, but I don't know if they're ranking them
Yeah.
by choice or what, so.
Yeah, I would, yeah, that's true. I think D should go above A.
Okay. Does everybody feel good about this?
Mhm.
Okay. Awesome. Moving on. All right, the next one up is bike and pedestrian crossings. And so I do have a little bit more information in the packet about these. And these are the overall ones, but they gave some red lines. Again, these are illustrative. I don't think that, they're necessarily exactly like this, but, you can see for A and B, these would be north, I believe, crossings north and south of Sauk Road, so that they're going east-west. So just toggling back and forth, so you can see A and B in these areas. So definitely, West Madison. Then you have Whitney Way. So this would be Forward Drive into Odana. That would be the C here. And again, these are bike ped connections. They're most likely, in many cases, bike ped bridges, similar to the ones we currently have over the Beltline. In this particular case, I think this is a connection to an existing path on Whitney Way with the sidewalk on the east side. And this would be D. E would connect the Beltline path on the north side of the Beltline from Whitney Way further south. I believe, I don't know which trail that is.
Southwest is.
That's, well, the southwest
goes to
path
the-
goes from,
Is that, oh, yeah, sorry, I
Yeah,
can't.
it goes down to Camp Randall.
There you go, southwest path, yep. So it'd be connecting basically the Beltline path to the southwest path. That is E.
that's
then
primarily
getting-
to the golf course? Is that the golf course, basically?
That's a spur, I think, for Odana Hills you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yep, I
that,
believe this is the golf course here.
that whole area is the golf course, I think. So it's effectively a city decision there on land use, right? Primarily for Madison.
Then they're getting into towards Fitchburg itself. So this would be a north side connection connecting Todd with Seminole. So kind of adjacent to the Arboretum. And then here's the south side connecting Seminole to the Cannonball on the south side. So that would, definitely hook into that Cannonball overpass. And so kind of continue the path on the south side. H would, closer to Park Street, so basically a connection to the local kind of frontage roads of Applegate and Ann Street over the Beltline. I would be, certainly over kind of in, kind of towards the town of Madison now, city of Madison. So this would be kind of connecting, in our northeast corner, Stewart Street with a connection. This is similar to the road connection that we saw before with the E, but this would be a bike ped connection. So basically a bridge over US 14 that would connect into Ski Lane Novation. Then J would be, I believe they kind of denoted this as a connection down to Stoughton and Monona, or sorry. Yeah, exactly. So, south side path connection. So basically just kind of a gap between kind of on-street facilities. And then K, going either further east. I'm not too familiar with this area, so I'm not sure if folks want to prioritize this, but or most folks drive a bike over here.
This is the dump, the county dump or city dump is to the north there.
Okay.
Where Ephemerite Drive ends. So it's in this area.
It's by the casino.
Yep, and the casino
And then,
areas.
and that's all of them. So,
So,
feel free if you want any more information, but, as far as the Fitchburg ones, we basically have H, which is that connection over, in between Fish and Park. We have I connecting into the town of Madison from kind of also the city of Madison, but kind of around northern limits across US 14. And then we have these two kind of path connections paralleling the Beltline. And then as well as there's plenty of other paths as well, just not as Fitchburg focused. So any thoughts? So right now, G, so you can follow the numbers. Well, actually, that's interesting. So they didn't rank order them. Oh, no, they did. But I believe that E is the number one, according to them, and it kind of goes down the list, B, C, H, G, I, F, D, H, K. So right now, H is standing pretty high. F and G are pretty middle of the pack along with I. So are there any thoughts about these projects? And I can't tell you why they organize them like this. This doesn't seem to be the prioritization. So I might just rearrange them while we talk.
I've come closer to losing my life on Whitney Way at the Beltline than any other place. So I think C, I'd like to see it a little higher. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
Oh, I see what they did. Sorry. I think they just accepted ED or E, B, C, and H as those are going through.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're just prioritizing the rest. Sorry for the miscommunication. I think they just ran out of spaces in their survey. So
Yeah, I remember them saying that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the I, G, and H are the Fitchburg relevant ones that are still on the,
Yep.
Fitchburg specific ones that are on the list.
yeah, and H already was moved forward. So yeah, so now we're talking about I, G, and F.
Well, having bicycled to the Coliseum a couple of times, I noticed that the diciest section is going from where the Cyan runs into 14 RM, you know, onward, northward, because there's a kind of painted bike area there, so whether it's a bridge or, you know, a more protected bike area there would be great. It doesn't have to be a bridge necessarily, but something does need to be there so you can access the quieter streets there besides Rimrock Road, you know, for people who want to get from Fitchburg to the Coliseum area and back and so forth, and on beyond to the East Broadway and so forth.
Later, I'm okay with it the way it is. I don't know the rest of you.
Okay.
Yeah, Fitchburg came out pretty good in a lot of these,
Yes,
actually.
yes,
Like,
we
they
did.
already prioritized what
We
pretty
need it.
high, what we had,
Yeah.
which I was pretty pleased when I first saw the presentation, yeah.
Is everybody comfortable with this?
Yeah,
I am.
basically, we're the top three.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with that.
Dubious.
Very good. Okay, I'll move on. All right, this next one is the park and ride locations. We also have pretty good standing here. D and E are top of the list, and so these are, you know, just transit park and ride locations. You know, I don't know how updated these are. I don't think they have specific locations picked out or anything. I think these are just general areas that they would like to locate these. Are there thoughts about these?
Well, I mean, the two that affect Fitchburg the most directly are
The first two.
our number one, so
Mm-hmm.
really can't complain
And-
about that order.
And Andrew, tell me about the Mccoy Road, or tell us about Mccoy Road, Lacey Road. Is that, how busy is that? Does that deserve being pushed up, or some of the other ones more needy that are outside of Fitchburg?
Right. You know, that's a good point. I'll say, you know, right now we're talking about the 49 going through there. You know, potentially if you're talking about just north of there, you know, up by Rimrock, then you'd be talking about the 16. With the updated network redesign, you know, again, if you're up by more like Rimrock, you know, there could be some transfers there, but as far as right now and kind of the plan, it would just be a commuter route. So,
I
you
would
know,
see
not
it's
knowing
nothing to be
all
around.
the stops, I would say there's potential. There's definitely land, you know, potential up there for transfer and for future growth. And you know, the fact that it's in Fitchburg might make us think that, you know, it's more valuable. But I can't really make a comparison with you know, the other external ones. I'm definitely happy D and E are prioritized. I feel
yeah,
like those are the
it's
most.
huge. Especially because we're only going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I was a little confused during the presentation about what this really means, though, the priority with these locations, or this was park and rides. Yeah, never mind, sorry. No,
Yep, this is park and rides.
okay,
Yep.
Yep.
yeah. It was the next one I was confused.
So, I mean, the only thing I could think would be that F could come up higher just from a Fitchburg focus, but, you know, I can't really say
I
that
think-
it's
yeah.
more important than B necessarily, so.
Yeah,
I don't-
let's not get greedy.
Yeah. Andrew, I didn't ask at the meeting because I figured they didn't have an answer, but like when they say park and ride locations, because we've talked about these park and rides, like we
Yeah,
literally had this
yeah,
conversation the last
yeah.
couple meetings. Does that mean that it would be funded partly or fully by WISDOT, or would it be a collaboration between WISDOT and the city? Do you have a sense of what this
Right.
plan going forward would mean in terms of funding?
That's a really good question. You know, and that's true of all these component parts, right? I mean, if we're talking about bridge, is that, you know, what's the expectation from a city match perspective? I didn't really get a good sense of that. From my understanding, you know, they're trying to package these together into like, what's the most viable projects? And then later on, I think we would figure out, you know, where's this funding coming from? Obviously, you know, with the new infrastructure bill, I feel like, you know, even though this is long term, I think there's a lot more opportunity to get grant funding for these sorts of things. So, I would expect most of these projects would solicit some good grant funding, knowing that's part of this larger project. But I think they're, I don't think we're getting a free park and ride or anything like
Yeah.
that necessarily. So
But I just think, we really need to start doing some work to identify locations, because if
Yeah,
everyone's
well, I've
thinking
got
that this
an
is,
idea,
I
too,
know,
for-
yeah.
for
I
something.
think that really is, I mean, given the fact that regionally, this is considered, those two locations in Fitchburg are considered high priorities, higher than anyone else. We need to start doing some legwork. I would think we should put some money behind doing some legwork to make that happen. But that's just a personal
I
opinion.
agree.
Me and Richard are on the park and ride,
Well, the
so.
way things go is they may say, anybody shovel ready, and if Fitchburg has their hand ready, raise.
know, we
We
do
have
own
a
the-
plan, we may qualify as a pilot or whatever, they want to do federal with, the details on the huge federal infrastructure highway plan are
Yeah.
just leaking out, but I have a feeling that if this plan is coordinated with that the city and county and Fitchburg
You know,
may be able to take advantage of funds from that source sooner than later.
and we
because
already
the political
own,
pressure will be on to do that.
we already own the property between the library and Fish Hatchery Road. I thought, if we build the structure, but that's another topic. That's
Yeah.
another conversation.
So that's,
okay. Is everybody
we're
comfortable with
placing the
these?
burden on you, Andrew, to have it shovel ready for us.
But I think we're all comfortable with the
Yeah,
order, right?
I'm comfortable
Okay.
with it.
Awesome. I'll move forward. Okay.
This is
This
the one I was confused
is a little in the weeds, but let's just say, we're talking about transit signal priority. These would be basically huge jumps, those sorts of things that would allow planned transit, like, for example, a 15-minute headway bus coming down Park Street over to Fish Hatchery Road to get through the signal with lower delay and, maintain schedule a little bit better. So, H is the highest one ranked so far. I believe C, they just are going to do the Mineral Point one, I think with some of the BRT or with some of the network redesign BRT updates. So I think again, H and I are well positioned. Are there thoughts about this generally? Do folks want to move any of the other ones?
Can you, so the ones, I'm just looking at my notes from before, the ones that are Fitchburg specific are H and I, which are already pretty high, and then J, F, and G, is that correct? I'm sorry, I might not be saying that in order.
Yep.
Okay.
That would be correct. Yep.
J, F, G are the other Fitchburg ones, okay.
I think Rimrock Road is, tied in with the city concept redesign of Nolan Drive and the Alliance Center. Those are kind of all tied into one, so I think it's J asterisk is Rimrock Road is really that whole corridor from Rimrock Road up past the Coliseum to John Nolan to the square, so I think
Sure.
that's worthwhile integrating with whatever concepts the city is entertaining for that area.
Is that something that you feel like we should move up on the list?
Yeah,
I feel like
think
that's
so.
definitely
I
good
think
nuance
so.
to add towards the comments as well.
Well, I think so because it's a gateway to the city and it's an important business source for the city businesses as well.
Okay.
We have a couple of
Do
hotels.
people feel
that-
comfortable about moving J further up?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. All the way to the top or below H and I?
I think 2 and 3 are equal priority for me, but
Okay.
I can see Fish Hatchery Road because I think growth in Oregon and McFarland and everything south of us is going to continue to grow. So I think as on a regional basis, we have to pay really a lot of attention to Fish Hatchery Road.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I'm good.
All right. Is everybody okay on this one? All right. Awesome. And then This, I mean, we can certainly go into this if you're interested, but this is basically, I believe this asks opinions about possible improvements. So the following images show different component concepts, and I believe this one, so how supportive are we of the following component concepts on in the future? And so this is flex lane, and so the question would be, basically, I feel like, I can skip ahead and kind of show you, yep, so these are various components kind of adding more and more options, right? Weave, improvement. It's basically just, how comfortable are we with these options? Oh, no, I definitely don't want just a flex lane or, somewhat, that sort of thing. So it's a Likert scale that, and then as we go along, we get kind of more and more complexity added to it. So then you get down here, we're talking about flex lane extensions and more interchange improvements, add a general purpose lane, and then add general purpose lane for the whole project. And so those, it's a series of questions here, really they're trying to gauge, is there a sweet spot? And so we can answer them individually, or if kind of folks feel like there's like a sweet spot, either the no build or the full general purpose lane or somewhere in between, we can kind of indicate that.
Well, I sent some comments to the person in charge of the study for DOT, which I shared with you and Gabrielle, and in there, I asked that they consider the effect on CO2 or carbon or, gases, and also on BTU, which is a subject that most people really don't think of, but even if we came up with the most idealized free energy source, the nuclear engine in every car type of thing, free energy, unmetered energy, we'd still be generating heat. So my criteria in the email was that we need to consider not only the effect on climate, the gases, but also another effect of climate, which is heat, because all these options progressively encourage more people to use cars, and cars generate a lot of heat, they generate a lot of gases. So I think my point was that we need to consider, much like we have economic impact statements and we have environmental impact statements, to me, even these type of projects at the local level need to consider the environmental impact statement type of approach, which affects heat budgets and gases generated by the choices made. So I asked that this be considered in these type of decisions, not just to make transit time more efficient for the commuters and users of the highway, but also the effect on everyone else, even if they don't use the highway.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
Go ahead.
I agree. So I think to operationalize what you're saying to this, I think we should, I have a lot of concerns about the option that's add a lane both ways. So I would vote for us to rank that at not at all or whatever it is, and then maybe rank no build or leave it the way it is higher. I think, yeah, I agree. They mentioned induced demand, and I think we should maybe, rank, answer these questions with an eye towards not expanding it.
Is that a general consensus? I feel like this one might be one of the more controversial questions.
I had two thoughts during their presentation. First, I thought that eventually that's what it's going to be. Whether they do it with this or the next one or the next one, sooner or later, this is where they're going to end up. But what I wanted to see was where a focus was on level of service more than anything else, and set that as a priority for which options they go forward with. Unfortunately, the best level of service, I think, was when you get the whole ball of wax, when you have the final option. I guess I'm interested in what you think about that, whether level of service is something that we should be looking at or worried about.
Well, my point on level of service is in Washington DC, the big international airport is called Dulles Airport. And when they built it way out in the boonies then, 30, 40 years ago, they had this half-mile wide corridor, and in it they put this, literally a 2-lane highway, right? And now it's 14 lanes. And at the time, everybody wondered, what in the hell were they doing buying such a big corridor? And I think even if we made the Beltline 5 lanes each direction, eventually it'd saturate it, and I think the pollution levels, you know, with that would be really big. I think encouraging people to think of the Beltline as an efficient corridor and to put resources in it really doesn't do justice to the impact on everybody else who lives nearby or is impacted by the noise and other factors that this type of major improvement would. And, you know, eventually they'd have to, you know, take out part of the arboretum and the golf course and, you know, there's a lot of, it gets really expensive really quick. They've literally run out of room now in the Washington Beltway with all the improvements they've made. So I think, you know, the climate change has made it quite clear to me that we have to pause and think of our criteria for making somebody else's commute more easy. We have to think of making everybody's life better in that sense, not just to make commuting more efficient.
Yeah, I remember reading the Beltline study done probably 15, 12 years ago or whatever. And I remember one impression I got from that was that no matter what they do to it, it can't get better. It's like taking a bucket of water out of the ocean. As soon as you remove the bucket, more water flows in there. And what we actually, the quality of the Beltline is what limits its use. If it becomes a problem for people, they won't use it. They'll go another way. If we provide a different way to get where you're going, then more people might choose that one because there's so many options. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation as far as what we're doing. And as far as trying to reduce traffic on the Beltline, that's never going to happen.
Yeah,
Just bring more cars.
I encourage them to think out of the box on this. This to me is a classic study of trying to pour more water through a limited, you know, pipe. And the Arboretum, I think, is one of the big clinkers in all this, is they don't want to give up any more land. And I think they're going to get a lot of support doing that. And I can't see the golf course giving up land. And you take out those 2 sections, you know, that really changes a lot of thinking.
So it sounds like everyone's kind of in agreement then. The
Yeah.
higher, the ones lower down that are more intensive.
Yeah,
We
to me,
deprioritize those and
I literally
prioritize.
did, you know, I went from top to bottom and I said extremely maybe for the first 1 or 2, possibly, you know, and then I just went down the road and the last one I said not at all.
Yeah.
That was I realized I didn't have to fill out the survey, I just allocate them
Yeah.
So
top to bottom.
so I'll say there's a little bit of nuance between the first few. So this is basically just what we see out there. You know, once the flex line this summer is in, this is going to be what it is. I think the next one is some, you know,
Yeah, those 2 like
interchange
classified
improvements,
as makes sense.
and then the next one will be extending that flex lane.
Yeah.
So I feel like these are maybe the more nuanced ones. And then I think this is extending the flex lane and doing the interchange improvements. So those, if we can just focus on those, knowing that, you know, the lane additions we're not very pleased about. I said a little for this one and not at all for the full, if that makes sense, or it could be not at all for
Yeah.
both.
As long as it's graduated, you know, I think
Okay.
that was my strategy.
So any thoughts on the interchange improvements and flex lane extension? Do we feel like the flex lane's needed on the west side? Is that beneficial for folks?
Well, we don't know how it's going to work. We know what we're told, but it hasn't been used
Right.
yet. So
Yep.
we're all guessing, I guess. And
Well, flex lanes make sense in the middle of something.
Yeah, I didn't understand that using
I
a shoulder.
don't understand the flex lane. That implies 12 all the way up to the Wisconsin River is mammoth development. I don't necessarily see that happening either, so.
And-
To me,
and I do
those
believe-
flex lane improvements on the west side are a little bit dicey. You know, maybe a third lane each direction and maybe inevitable, but beyond that, I can't see the benefits of a flex lane, because that implies
Yeah, I was-
people
I was
going
surprised.
further than Middleton.
Okay. And then thoughts on interchange improvements? Are those reasonable or do we not like those? And again, those would be in these locations. I can zoom in. So that these are, you know, I think they're talking about specific weave improvements, but then also interchange improvements generally.
I'm fine with the interchange improvements. I'll just throw my 2 cents on the flex lane. I get uncomfortable, like, I don't live out in that area, and to make decisions for people who live out there is a little bit problematic just for myself. So I kind of lean to the no build. The other thing is, if you do improvements way out there in the Middleton area, that's when there's going to be more, it'll aid more growth. So it's not just about improving the Beltline. I mean, if you make it easier to go back and forth to that area, you'll see more expansion out in that area, suburbs and all of that stuff. So
would it be fair to say somewhat for all of these, or do we want to have some graduation? I mean, all of the other ones that we haven't rated yet. These other 4.
I'm in favor of not at all for flex lanes.
Okay.
West of Whitney Way, so to speak.
Okay, so I'll do somewhat on this one, somewhat on this one, or maybe perhaps vary. We can maybe come back to that. And then I'm hearing a more along the lines of not at all or a little on this. I want to be kind of neutral to be respectful of what Jason's saying, but I don't know. They don't really have a neutral category,
Yeah, they really
unfortunately.
should have a not
Somewhat.
neutral.
It's,
Somewhat is kind of neutral, though. It's like, I don't
Right.
really know, yeah.
it's not exactly kosher. These are called Likert scales, but
Right, yeah. It's
someone,
not exactly following like her.
somebody
Yeah.
didn't study their statistics too well, I guess.
I have no idea, but my guess is people that live out in that area would love to have it expanded. But, you know, like was said before, we have to kind of look at what's best for everybody for the whole city. So
Maybe a little then for those.
Okay, I can definitely do a little on both of these. Then we have a little, not at all, for the lane expansions.
Yeah.
Does that feel right? We're definitely having some graduation as we get higher up. I could say vary in this case if folks feel comfortable with this,
Let's,
basically the current state.
what do you think, Andrew? What would you like? If we weren't here, what would you be marking?
Honestly, I would probably be somewhat similar to this. I think there's a lot of implications of induced demand if we're adding general purpose lanes. I know that we have issues right now. I will say as issue, for the Verona Road to the Beltline, if that, as those connections get worse and worse, we're going to start to see more and more traffic on Mccoy, Fish Hatchery Road, MM. Certainly still arterials. Folks aren't cutting through neighborhoods yet, but there are implications of delay on the Beltline bleeding over into delay on Fitchburg roads. Having said that, really, I don't think, to you guys' point, not to belabor that, I don't think building more lanes is ever going to fix the problem. It's just going to delay that traffic getting bled over onto our road. So,
wait, Andrew, the
Well,
interchange.
I think I would agree with this.
and is the solution building better roads and bigger roads, or having better transit?
Right.
Bingo.
I mean, ultimately, I think it's a land use, not to get too philosophical here, but a land use transportation kind of combination there, right? That we're building, all the things guys know about transit-oriented developments and mixed use, so that folks can, get to the things they want to fairly easily and without having to drive. So I think overall, obviously not everywhere, but at a regional scale, we try to do that, and that therefore maybe not foregoing lane expansions on the Beltline. So,
Andrew,
yeah, I would agree with this.
the interchange and weave improvements, do those improve safety as well, or is that only gonna? Because I have to imagine that some of these interchanges and these weave locations are, part of the reason we want to improve them is because they're causing accidents, not
Yep.
just.
Yep. I think there's operational and safety benefits to those, depending upon what the transition is. But yeah, I think they'd be addressing both, and actually the safety implications also benefit operations, because then you get,
Yeah, because I
less
would think
events.
that the interchange and then the next one with the interchange and weave, I would be put that at very.
As very, okay. This one?
But I don't know, that's kind of my inclination,
Yep.
is just because I think that those
Okay.
are those have broader benefits than just
Yep.
traffic management.
Okay.
They're also safety concerns.
Awesome. So just to review, we got varies on the no build and the interchange and weaves. We're going down to a little once we start extending the flex lane and then adding general purpose lanes, and then not at all for a full general purpose lane the whole stretch. Does that feel right? So very much graduated.
I think the criteria should be safety, is probably more important than capacity in general for these things. Under the theory that you can always make something safer, but you can't ever build enough capacity. So in some cases, it may make sense not to add capacity, because if you add a lot of capacity in one part, it just moves like a wave to the next bottleneck. And those bottlenecks will always occur, no matter how many lanes you build, because people adjust. So to me, safety is much more important than capacity.
Yep. And if we could rewrite the survey, probably add that, but
Okay. Can we do that?
all right. Next
Can we
one up.
critique the
I
survey?
think now we're at interchanges. So this gets a little specific on what type of interchange we're looking at here, but so we can skip this one if you guys are interested, but this is basically looking at individual interchanges and saying what the priority is. And so, and they have laid out some promising layouts. So basically different innovative designs versus just conventional, lane additions at intersections, at interchanges. So if folks are interested in this, we can go through it.
No.
My sense would be we would be prioritizing ours, but if not, we can just skip it. I can fill this
Yeah,
out.
I think this was not part of the policy, because I think it's too technical. I really don't think we covered it in the policy one.
Fair enough.
So
Are there any
that
thoughts
might
that
not
you
be
want
on
to
my
pass
survey.
on?
I think that might only be on your
I would-
survey.
The only one I have an opinion on, Andrew, is Gammon, because that is right now a poorly designed interchange there with, there's the both interchanges, there's the west town, and then to the south, there's the shopping area there, and it's always a nightmare driving through there, because so that whole set of interchanges in that area are
Yep, I can
to me,
definitely
a
add that.
major concern for
Any
the
other
future.
thoughts on this one? Okay. So I will move on. And so this is a general comment. So I won't submit right now. I'll hold off. I mean, this is all recorded, so I can go back and fill them all in if I lose this. But feel free to send me any specific comments about this discussion. I'll watch this again and then fill in anything I heard. But if there's anything additional that you forgot, feel free to send it to me. I
Well,
can add.
I'll just mention one thing. I would like to be notified by email, if possible, of the PIMs. I don't know if you want to just
Sure,
put
about
that, or
Beltline.
if the rest of the commission wants to be included and just throw all our emails in there to,
Sure.
please, you guys speak up anytime here.
Yeah, I'll never complain about being overwhelmed by information from you, Andrew.
Okay.
And
Sounds
Andrew,
good.
would you email me what your final answers to, since I have to also submit
Sure.
a survey? We have
Yep.
three, at least three people.
Alright.
I'm gonna check with Randy and see if Randy can also, Randy's an alternate, and I think he
Yeah.
might be able to submit a survey too, so.
But you got on and did the survey?
No,
Oh.
I just viewed
I was gonna
the
try to cheat
video of the
and get in
meeting.
there.
You have to put your name in, so I think they'll probably, I would think that they'd check it.
Well, I don't know. All of a sudden I was watching the video and I didn't argue as to how I got there.
Yeah, I really get it. I'm ready.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate
Let's
that.
not,
Thanks
yeah,
for
let's
doing
not,
my
let's not
homework
vote
for me.
on that.
Let's not get in trouble
Let's
here.
not do that.
Yeah.
But we'll have 3 to 4 votes
If you see
from
my name
Fitchburg,
as
so.
voting, please send my apologies for having cracked their system accidentally.
All right.
All right,
Are
do we
done
have any
with-
more comments on the Beltline Pell?
Just thank you.
Yeah, that was a really good discussion, thanks, that was helpful.
All right. Okay, next, we'll move on to action item 7A, Resolution R1822. This is a discussion of the closure investment plan. And I don't know.
Should I start with the motion, or?
Yeah, and
I'll move approval.
we'll have a motion, and then I think Gabriella, you might
Yeah, I can give a summary.
be the person to lead the discussion on this.
And I'll second.
Okay.
She moved. you
Yep,
did
move
your-
approval for R1822.
Yeah.
Anyways, that fits in with protocol. The person making the motion usually leads the discussion.
Great. It's okay if I jump in, Andrew, or? Yeah, so we did cover this last time, but I'll go over a little bit more since we're further along in the process. So, just right back, way to the beginning. ARPA stands for the American Rescue Plan. It's federal funds. They're giving direct aid to each, basically local municipality in the entire country. It's kind of a fascinating experiment. But we got 3.2 million. There are specific rules that we have to follow. But because of the final rules, it looks like we actually have a lot more flexibility than we even thought we would. So that's $3.2 million. At the same time, we are closing tax increment district number 6. And because the cost came far under what we expected, we have about $2 million left over. That's coming back to the city after we pay out to the rest of the taxing municipalities. So that money is basically tax money that we can do whatever we want with. The one caveat being that we cannot use it for ongoing expenses. It has to be one-time expenses. Anything ongoing, we really need to be working into the budget. So it's kind of gives us, these 2 one-time pots of money give us a really unique opportunity to both invest in interesting ideas and or put us ahead so that we don't have to take out debt in the future on things, or maybe even avoid utility rate increases for stormwater projects, things of that nature. It really gives us it's really a unique opportunity. We don't typically have $5.2 million to just spend how we like. So it's pretty fascinating. Early in January, the finance director went through and talked about the different rules for how it's used, but ultimately TID money is we can do whatever we want with TID money. So although ARPA has some rules associated with it, TID money is completely free and open. And then after that point, the mayor put together a proposal of how we should spend that money. And he identified different priorities. They actually do not have, there actually is a link in the packet that goes to so he put together several different priority areas that he thought we should focus on, and then within those priority areas listed out the projects that would be funded. This is a lot shorter than what you would see in a budget or a capital improvement plan because it's very much a plan, like an early planning document. It is not actually dedicating the money. What will happen next is after we accept so mayor put out his plan, the next step is for the alders to amend it and then have the amendment discussion and followed by adoption of the plan. After that, it's up to the staff to kind of start investigating these things, finding out what is possible, what the timeline is. We'll start incorporating them into the capital improvement plan and then maybe into the budget. But this money is going to be spent probably over the next 2 to 4 years. Right. There's no way we could spend it all in 1 year. And we might not actually spend a lot of it even this year because about the planning horizons that it takes. So all that being said, I think the best way to move forward with this is being referred out to all committees. We did have a discussion last time, and I know I got some emails from you about ideas. I think the best thing to do, I have to submit amendments by Monday. So any ideas that I'm going to work on, I'm Friday night is kind of my deadline because I have to work on it over the weekend and get it in on Monday to the finance director. So there's a very short timeline. I have taken a look at all those emails and I'm considering all those. Like, I cannot promise that I will include everything that has been suggested, but I am taking it all very seriously. But for this conversation, I think we should focus on if there's anything that has not been brought up in regards to transportation transit-related issues that you would like me to consider for an amendment, because the mayor's plan is already solid and done.
Could you summarize the suggestions you've gotten from people in the committee TTC on that cover transportation and
So the
transit?
primary, so I've heard a couple. I've heard bus stop covered, covers and bus stops and bus stop improvements and safety improvements. So that was one. There actually is some money in there. It's specifically allocated to certain bus stops, but I think there's some possibilities there. And then the other one is doing some research into park and ride components. Not necessarily land acquisition at this point, but really about finding where those locations are, which I do think is a little more urgent than. So those are the two main ones that I've heard in regards to and I know I've gotten some emails from you, Troy, too, and I've seen your other ideas, but I think we should keep this focused on transportation and transit. So
Well, I'd like to have Andrew and the mayor and the city council try and integrate things having to do with transportation and transit with the mammoth federal highway, transportation bill that was passed in the last year, and strategize the best way to use that with the information you know now and these two pots of money.
So you try to
if-
incorporate all three together?
Well, yeah, because it doesn't make sense if there's going to be some money from the federal government available for bus stops. Doggone it, we should spend our money on stuff that is not there. So I mean,
yeah, so that's
even though we're the Transportation and Transit Commission, I think we have to be strategic as to which pots of money we use as a city
100%.
on that basis.
The mayor actually specifically called this out in his letter, and that's part of the reason why there's a delay between the plan and the implementation, is because there will be staff research. We do want to do the best to leverage the money in the most efficient way to benefit the taxpayers. So ideally, we are using, when there's match funding for grants or federal grants, we want to be using this money to amplify the money we're getting elsewhere.
I mean, we may be able to use, although I read restrictions in that you can't not use it as matching funds in some
Well,
cases.
not for ARPA, we can do it for TID funding.
Okay, but
Yeah.
see, so that's what I'm saying is you almost need a matrix and a who's who and player
Yeah.
player
Yeah, and that's-
rules. When you're making these decisions, every decision impacts the other two pots.
Oh my gosh, I
basically.
know, our finance director's gonna have to do a lot of
Oh, yeah.
figuring out how things all fit
It's, a
together.
Ouija board is not big enough to handle all these possibilities.
But
that's
your
for
point is
sure.
well taken, and that has been discussed, both in the mayor's letter, we discussed it at the most recent meeting.
Yeah.
We had a special finance committee meeting
Yeah.
where we discussed the mayor's plan, so that is being thought of, and the staff that's a high priority for the staff as they do more research.
But I think also, Andrew, this may affect a little bit, the planning for the BRT, say on Fitchburg hatchery, because that's another pot of money in a kind of an interim future for us. And I've been thinking of how would I turn the buses around? And I thought of, we may go around the block there that the Walgreens is on, to avoid the Cahill Loop problem, and now you can't make that left turn, you only can make it at the light, and that might get us close to the library, and if we do that loop, well then, maybe we want to do the loop at the library, and, like we have that land available for that, for park and ride, so that's why I think a little strategy planning by the city engineering and, public works and the mayor and the council on how to do this. So to me, we need to develop a 5-10 year time frame. And these three pots of money are, obviously great candidates for that, but it's
So
kind of changing how we do our typical budgeting, long-term strategic planning, having suddenly these two pots readily available and now this huge pot the
Yeah, well, it
federal
actually sounds like we should
transportation.
talk about that. Maybe we should talk about
Right.
that concept for the capital improvement plan, about something, because really this is more of like a 2 to 4 year time
Yeah,
horizon.
so that,
And not the
yeah.
5, 10, that's what you would do something like that with a capital
Yep,
improvement
and
plan.
that's, I mean,
Yeah,
to
it's
me,
just outside of the
there are
scope of
multiple
this.
timeframes involved, and, you know,
Yeah.
I'd like to see the council adopt in their discussions a framework as to what their time frame is, so people know that if it's, outside of 4 to 5 years, then we need to think of a different way of doing that.
Yep, yeah. The capital improvement plan
Yep.
this
I have
summer
things I
might be
would love to talk to you about, but they don't relate to TTC on
Yes.
on this, so I'll catch you afterwards.
great.
Yes. She's my elder, so that helps a lot. I got her 2 ways to Sunday, or TTC, and I'm a constituent, so there we go.
All right, so,
All right. Any other feedback for Andrew on this resolution that we're under discussion with?
And just to clarify, we'll pass this, but then it will be amended through the
Yeah.
process. So the final bill will be amended by the council.
Yeah, and this is, this is an action item, but, we're really giving permission to the city council and the mayor and you, Andrew, and your department to go through and, get us further on the road, but I think this is the right path to go. And I think you're doing a good job so far under really shortened time conditions.
we are adding bike lanes to Wayland, and I see there's
And the
things in
city
here that-
finance director will probably deserve a city medal of valor or something after this is all done. All right,
Do we have
So,
to do any action on this?
I think we
we-
take a vote, yeah.
yep. So if that's it, discussion will be closed and we'll have a vote. All those in favor of adopting Resolution R1822, adopting the ARPA TID number 6 closure investment plan, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Let the record show that this was passed unanimous. Next action item is 7B, Resolution R2422, approving the relocation order and the TRP related to reconstruction of Cyan Road from Aurora Avenue to Mccoy Road. Andrew, could you start us off on that, please? Oh,
We need a motion.
we can entertain a motion of approval.
Sure. Yeah, do you want to do that first?
Do that first. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Okay, I'll second.
All right. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I keep, unfortunately, closing my packet as I try to open up other tabs, like
Wants to get out
ARPA
of
spending
here.
plans. So this is the transportation project plat associated with the Cyan project. So happy to talk through basically what's going on with the Cyan project, but really what you're seeing here, similar to Lacey, similar to Fish Hatchery Road before that. This is laying out the specific both permanent and temporary easements needed by the city to complete the phase 1 of the Cyan Road project. We do have the full limits on this transportation project plat. We obviously won't get to the phase 2 stuff in this stretch, and so we'll basically just be amending this in the future to add more sheets to it. But in this case, we're really talking about, basically what you see here is, what we're asking council ultimately for approval on is these specific areas. So we can get appraisals, we can contact property owners, present those appraisals, and then get those approved and checks and sent. So start that negotiation process and work through it. And so this is kind of the kickoff to that, identifying those areas. And so if you have any questions, I can answer them.
I think the tree commission is one of the important groups on this.
The what commission?
Tree commission?
Tree advisory.
Tree Advisory Committee. I'm sorry, we're the commission, all right. Because I think a lot of infrastructure improvements think are better if the city arborist and that type of person is involved right up front on the
I think
planning, so.
Anna Healy, I believe she is consulted on all these projects.
Yeah,
Is that
so
correct, Andrew?
I think that's an important consideration, especially since tree canopies are proven to add value to the city and to reduce the heat island effect, so
Mhm.
I'm very happy to see the tree advisory committee listed. In fact, are there any committees that were not listed, Andrew?
Yep, I believe there are. a few.
The library committee isn't there, I guess. Oh, no,
Yep.
they're too, so, okay, good. I'm glad everybody's being consulted, this is pretty
Actually,
important.
tree advisory is not on the list for this one. I think you might be looking at the
Yeah, I don't-
ARPA.
Or,
We were on the list for ARPA,
Public
but,
Works, TTC,
Oh.
Plan and Finance.
yeah, it
You're
wasn't
right.
referred out in time for tree.
Oh.
Tree advisory only meets
I-
4 times a
Yep.
year, so.
Gotcha. I thought maybe council might have preferred it, but yeah, so I don't believe it's going to that. I think it's Board of Public Works, TDC, and Finance. And so, but we are projecting somewhat limited tree impacts, mainly related to a few areas south of Lacey Road, for example, adjacent to the Hartung property for a bike path there. Potentially some on the west side of Cyan near East Sherrill, but we're not anticipating large impacts to the tree canopy.
okay. You're right, I intermixed two of my notes together there.
Yeah, we just met earlier today, so that's why.
Ah.
I'm on tree advisory as well.
All
so.
right, I knew you were, that's why I brought it up.
Was there any concerns with this overall, though? To me, you see KL Engineering on the drawings, you know there's quality work involved. Kim used to head this group. And it seems pretty standard pat to me that we should, I don't see anything glaringly that worries me.
Yeah,
This-
I think it's a standard status interim approval mechanism at stake here for me, so I see no problem in approving it.
And Andrew, this was informed, you had public hearings or information gathering sessions from neighbors last year related to this project, is that right?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
Not at this level of detail,
Yeah.
certainly. So this is before kind of this, so we basically got 30% design to inform this. And we do expect some amendments to this possibly, depending upon some of those negotiations and, as design continues. But, so, yeah, we had 9 meetings about the project generally. A lot of those lasted hour and a half. So, certainly lots of time discussing it. Now we're getting a little bit more in the weeds. And we certainly, we'll be posting kind of updates to the city website, just keeping folks involved in that. I would actually like to get another one of those meetings here in the spring, just to kind of circle back with folks now that we have a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I just trust that you, and I know you've had all these public involvement meetings, so you take that into consideration. I know you can't always accommodate everyone's wants and needs, but that was part of the process early on. Is there anything in here that you would consider would be surprising or really off from what those came out of those conversations?
I think there is some concern from some of the homes north of East Sherrill about sidewalk impact, so new sidewalk, for example, on the east side. There's also some temporary easements and a permanent easement for stormwater there. So there's some kind of give and take. I think we're addressing stormwater concerns, and you'll see that on 4.02, page 9 of 5. I believe, just want to double check that. Oh, no, sorry, page 6 of 9. So that shows kind of this small stormwater area, parcel 14. And so that'll fix the stormwater concerns, but some of that temporary limited easement along that will be grading associated with, tying in the curb and gutter and the sidewalk. So, that, I think that, it's certainly contentious, and I think, there's, we have reasons why we want to connect the sidewalk there. It's connected on the east side throughout, from East Sherrill north through the fire department. So that was really our justification there. I think the only other location would be near Hartung. So that would be kind of a larger acquisition permanent fee area to basically create kind of a stormwater path. And really the justification there is just there's a culvert further south. We're basically extending the time that it takes for the water to get to the creek. So that's the rate control, basically. Just making sure that the storm water, coming off the street, coming off the adjacent properties takes a longer path to get there so that those waterways are not overrun. And so that's a larger area adjacent to the railroad tracks south of Lacey. So east side of the tracks, south of Lacey. So that's a larger area. I think those are kind of the two areas I would say bigger / controversial, but otherwise I think everything's pretty straightforward.
Great.
Are there further questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, then we'll have a motion, vote on the motion to approve. All those in favor of approving, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next on the agenda is item 8, report from the department. Andrew, that's all yours.
Thanks. I don't know why I keep muting myself. Okay, so two things. I think, Troy, I think you specifically won a little bit more discussion about some of the items that went to Plan Commission that were affecting transportation resources.
Yep.
There was at the last Plan Commission in January, R05-22 was an easement affecting the Cannonball Trail. That was really just kind of denoting an easement where private sewer laterals were already installed. So that, basically the sewer interceptor there is co-located with that Cannonball right of way. And so that was just kind of there's some digging, we understood that, there's the private laterals there that we didn't know about. So I had to get that easement. So that was really all that one was. So not really too impactful for transportation.
It wasn't
Any
quite
questions
clear
about
as
that
to
one?
how much digging or new construction would have to be done there. And I was asking because of the impact on the bridge, from going north from there and, on the trail itself. So you don't see any impacts on implementing this?
I don't think so. I think that already occurred and now we're just formalizing that.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Okay, that wasn't quite clear to me. What?
If you guys ever have a concern with
What was
something the
new?
Plan Commission's doing, please let me know. If you could tell me before the meeting, because I'm there.
Okay,
So,
Yeah,
I can
no,
at
that's a good
least
point.
address it and back and forth. But so much of the business is pretty I don't want to say routine. I mean, our packets can get up to 800 pages, but it's still, a set procedure for a lot of these things. If we just go through and everything, all the T's are crossed and I's dotted, then things usually proceed.
yeah.
And I haven't, actually, last meeting was the first time ever that I've seen us deny two different things.
When I read the meeting of minutes, I said, well, this might have a peripheral impact on transit, that type of stuff. I was thinking of the bicycle commuters there, so that's why, just if that occurs, one of you two can, if there's any impact on transit or transportation through the Plan
Yep.
Commission, besides the boilerplate stuff, I'd be interested in
Right.
having that brought
And
up.
actually, Rich, if you'd agree with me, I think there were a few transportation-related items. Certainly the Burn Road. I think there's
Yeah,
some
and
concern
like
about
I said,
that.
a lot of those
waiting.
are pretty much just procedural, where as long as everything is met and followed, and there's no
Mhm.
no reason to deny anything or to address anything. So if there is something, I wish you would let me know.
Just
And
something I
yeah,
noticed.
so yep. So that was a request from Troy. I think also St. Ambrose similarly. Again, condition of
Yeah.
approval just to make sure we
Conditional
don't have
use
to get
permits,
Was that?
you're talking about conditional use?
Yeah, I think it's for the ADR. I think we had a condition of approval
Oh, for ADR?
or the ADR
Oh.
at the St. Ambrose Academy, specifically related to concern about queuing spill back into the nearby roundabout. So just a heads up, but
Okay.
that's
No,
just a
I
condition
remember the
once they
St.
give us that
Ambrose, yeah.
analysis.
Yeah,
we
that was
should-
the other one that caught my attention, that I think I mentioned to you, was St. Ambrose. I said, might be a small impact there of interest, but I don't expect a big discussion, just in passing mention
yep.
of things like that.
Yep, so I just wanted to give you,
So we can
You
then
asked
go
for it.
to
There you go.
read the plan commission stuff ourselves type of thing, if
Yeah,
that makes
good, I
sense to do
guess.
so.
The key-
It's dry reading, I know, but,
No, some of the drawings, I mean, you could spend half an hour looking at one sheet.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
some
so-
engineering firms you can tell are first class and have been here, done that before, and others you can tell are not exactly up to the
It
standards.
could be anything from whether it's dark sky compliant, but let's not
Yeah.
drag this down.
Yeah, that's not.
I
well, that's
have a
not
request for Andrew,
transportation
though. Are
related.
you done, when you're done with your report?
Okay,
sure.
go on, Andrew.
Yeah, so Fitchburg on-street parking ordinances, we did that public meeting that was held on January 31st. And I can put that in the packet or in the minutes, I'll give you guys that link. So we have a recording of that. Lieutenant Hartwick did a great job kind of talking through some of the, the issues of just, increasing enforcement. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. And we have some specific strategies that we might look to employ both on winter parking and on just general on-street parking, just cleaning some stuff up, making it a little bit clearer for folks, maybe making a map online. And we do have a follow-up survey that I will also embed the link in the minutes, and then be posting that on the website. So again, just trying to meet people where they are, make sure that we're getting the word out and having other mediums for folks to offer feedback. And then depending upon the results of that, I'll probably be back in the next couple months to discuss that with you.
Well, I'd prefer you not put items in the minutes that were not actually gone and discussed during the meeting. So if you have links to something else, I'd love to see it, but I don't go back to the minutes
Sure.
other than to the next meeting. And I think that the minutes should really just reflect what has been discussed during the meetings. And if there's a link to a large report or something else that I think it belongs somewhere outside of the minutes, maybe, I don't know, you guys got an opinion?
Yeah, in the general parliamentary procedure, people who add things extra, that usually originates from the members themselves. So I think, if we haven't discussed it, or if we ask you to include it, I think that's the appropriate thing to do.
I'd rather see it separate, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's no harm in putting it in the minutes, but it would be great to get a separate email with the links if that's
Yeah,
possible.
And
to
that
the
would
It makes
discuss it
sense,
now that
Andrew,
you're
to
gonna- So you
to
could just,
send an email that can be referenced as part of the public
yeah,
record.
so,
That, this document exists and so forth with additional information.
or you will be sending this link out to us. That's fine, that's discussed.
So, one link instead of 100 type of thing.
Okay. Yep, sorry. Just sometimes, I didn't have the survey done by the time the packet was made, so obviously I can't put it in the packet. But, so it's just a timeline stuff. But I want to make sure that the word gets out, so that's
Yep,
what I'm telling you now. But yeah, I can definitely send you any way you guys like it. So. Also, and that's, design continues on Lacey. We're reaching out to property owners, and we'd expect, we did get a tree, we did bid out the tree clearing contract on West Lacey. That needs to be done by June 1st ahead of the rest of the road project. We asked council to reject the bids, and so we're going back out just to clarify a few things and maybe get a little bit better pricing. And so that'll be back out for the next 2 weeks, and then come back to council. And then Cyan, as I mentioned, 30% design done now with the transportation project plat. So design continues on that. Any questions?
Now, is it time for my request?
Sure.
We have some great city documents, and one of them is the bike ped plan. I would like to see a Transportation Department have a regular, be it 3 or 5 year review of these things and bring them up to date so that they don't become outdated. And like, our housing plan is one of the best documents we have. That doesn't apply to us here, but the bike ped plan, I would like to see it at least reviewed every few years and then make sure we're on track, we're keeping up, and see what we need to change.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to establish a schedule of these major documents with the chair and, you know, the committee approves type of thing. So it gets more of a formal basis. Right now, it becomes, you know, somebody asks you a question or somebody wonders why we haven't done an update in umpteen years or whatever, and then all of a sudden, you know, it becomes a primary issue, you know, and you have to burn the midnight oil in some cases to get it done. So I like to put things on a more orderly schedule so that we know that we'll be discussing, you know, over this time frame, that so we can do our background research and ask questions and, you know, have a more orderly process than everything at the last minute, which doesn't help you or us to do our jobs.
No, we're not trying to dump on you, but I just, if we
So
somehow
that's-
put it into a grand scheme of things that,
Yeah.
to review a lot of these that are very good documents and important documents.
Yep, and so I think last time we talked a little bit about that from a prioritization standpoint. I know 2010 transit study came up. That's what we're talking about today. I'm hearing potentially, you know, maybe this one's one of the next ones. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Well, I guess a lot of work has gone into these, and I'd like to see it stay current. And that's just the one that came to my mind in the last few months, but I'm sure there's other ones out there too. Some are in your department, some in others. But I guess I don't want to end up having to say it to Andrew someday that, hey, we need this by in a month, you know. But if we have a regular maintenance kind of schedule for a lot of these things that we do rely on.
Yeah, there are a lot of these issues are related to long-term and strategic policy, and I think we need to keep those at the forefront of our thoughts as we're making decisions, and, you know, knowing that we're working actively on maybe the next major document in background, so that when we get there, we've kind of familiarized ourselves with the key documents, and, you know, we're not just approving, we're really discussing and formulating as we go along.
It's just food for thought. That's all I was trying to do. I'm not trying to ask anything.
You're our resource, Andrew, so
Right. Yep.
we want to make good use of you.
Yep, and it's a good point. And I think establishing kind of review cycles on all of these would be a good idea. I know, you know, as you mentioned, a lot of these are cut across. You know, Bike and Ped is mainly, you know, the bike committee. I think they're the ones who primarily, you know, approved it last time. But, you know, there's certainly multiple. There's planning, there's engineering involved, and so I think having you know, we know what the comp plan schedule is, but for these other ones, there's not quite as clear cut. And I think establishing that so that we don't have all of them, you know, changing over at the same time would be helpful.
And the comp plan had to be changed every 10 years. That's by law, I believe.
Right.
We now went to 5 for the city,
But I think, you know, maybe the administrator and your boss, you know, and the mayor and the council can, you know, maybe a topic for the committee of the whole or something on getting a more formal schedule or, you know, a framework for these type of major policy documents and that take a while to discuss and you have questions and whatever. And I think what I've noticed in looking at council meetings and our discussions is we tend to do these at the last minute, you know, because something, you know, there's a federal grant. They say, you have to have this ready and done, and you burn the midnight oil, so to speak, and, you know, we do it at the next meeting, and, you know, I'd like to have it, you know, more of a strategic focus of our activities and yours and the city council and so forth going forward, not just on our policy, but in policies in general. I think we do way too much at the last minute. And that puts the burden on you, right? Because, you know, by design, we rely on staff, so I want to be nice to our staff
Appreciate that.
and to the people we work for, which are the people of the city of Fitchburg. Is there any further discussion of Andrew's report? Okay. Moving on, we'll go to the announcements. The next meeting will be
March
March
10th.
10th.
on the 10th. Again, right, I keep
Yeah, it's February.
I keep forgetting that March is like February uneven, except for leap years, right? So that'll be there. Are there any other announcements? All right. That leaves adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Come on, Elizabeth.
I'll move.
Yay.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. This meeting's adjourned at 8:39 PM.
Thank you.